Okay, let's get started. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Wadawurrung people, and traditional owners of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. This meeting is being broadcast on the internet, and the recording of this meeting will be published on the Council's website. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Councillor Kylie Grisbeck, and I am the Acting Mayor tonight. Just a few words before we jump into the meeting. With our health and safety measures continuing, we still don't have members of the community here with us in the chamber for tonight's meeting, but I'm glad that you'll be watching via live stream. Before we get into the agenda tonight, a quick word about the current COVID-19 situation. The case numbers we are continuing to see in Melbourne are worrying, and I think by now we're well and truly aware that the pandemic is far from over. It is not good. We are grateful that we in Greater Geelong are not having to return to tougher restrictions up to this point, but we really want to keep it this way. So I do ask that we all continue to do our best to protect ourselves and our families and others. Please adhere to the gathering limits in your homes and outdoors. Continue to strictly follow the 1.5 metre physical distancing rules. Practice good hygiene habits, and such as washing your hands. And if you're unwell, please get tested and stay home. This will help the spread of the virus and keep the number of new cases in our region low. I would say that we need to be kind to one another, especially our friends and family and our colleagues in the metro areas that are doing it pretty tough at the moment. Our community has been so disciplined since the start of the pandemic, and it may seem like this is dragging out, but it is becoming a real marathon now. We need to stick at it, and I'm sure we will. So thank you, everyone, and let's begin the meeting. Are there any apologies tonight? Yeah, so I'll note that in the next one. So leave of absence, I note that Mayor Asher is taking an approved leave of absence from the 6th to the 18th of July. Are there any new requests for leave of absence from councillors? No? Okay. Can I please have a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the community focus meeting held on the 9th of June 2020? Councillor Mansfield, seconded Councillor Murray. All those in favour? That is carried, thank you. Declarations of conflicts of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest in relation to tonight's agenda?
Conflict, Madam Mayor, for item 6. Some of those that have been identified as successful preferred suppliers to the City of Greater Geelong for plant hire are customers of the company of which I'm a director of.
Thank you, Councillor Untitled. Councillor Nelson.
Madam Acting Mayor, I have a conflict with item 2.
Item 2, Councillor Nelson. Okay, thank you. But if any other conflicts arise during the meeting, please make them known. The next section is public question time and submissions. We don't have any members of the community here in the gallery with us tonight, so to ask questions or make submissions. So we do accept these online. However, tonight there are no questions or submissions, so we will move on to the petitions. Are there any petitions to be tabled? No, thank you. We'll move on to section B, reports. Item number 1 is the Lara flood study, moved by Councillor Aiken and seconded by myself. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Grisbeck. Look, I should acknowledge that Councillor Grisbeck would have actually moved this item, but because she's sitting in the chair, she's actually asked me to do that tonight. This particular report that's coming for us is to bring back to us the Lara flood study, which Council originally commissioned in mid-2018. This was from a grant from the Victorian Government's Natural Disaster Resilience Grant Scheme. And why does Lara have to have a flood study and mitigation plan? Well, essentially the Hovels Creek catchment area has a significant riverine flooding, and the urban parts of Lara have significant stormwater flooding. And in fact, there's, I think it's quoted that there's 6,152 properties in Lara that are regularly damaged by both riverine and urban flooding in that particular area. The flood mitigation plan is the first major study for over 30 years in terms of flooding and the impacts of flooding in Lara area. And it gave us an opportunity to actually use modern techniques and measurement and engineering technology to actually properly measure and undertake a full mapping of the Hovels Creek catchment area and the Avalon Road catchment area. What the report showed us is we've now got a clearly defined and up-to-date flood maps for that particular area. What it did tell us was that there is significant flooding that occurs in the Lara area. And in fact, the report uses a financial analysis tool which actually says there's a total of average annual cost to the Lara community associated with our urban and riverine flood damage is approximately $2.48 million per year. So that's a significant impost on an annual basis for that community associated with flooding. What the report does tell us is that there is a potential for a number of recommendations from the flood mitigation plan. And what a number of those recommendations, it does tell us that we should undertake a planning scheme amendment, councillors, to update the flood-related planning overlays that actually exist in the Lara area. It also tells us that the flood plan was appropriate because of our sustainability framework policy document to actually consider the impact of climate change and flood risk in the Lara area. It also, importantly, the document also referenced to Council's current climate change adaptation strategy as well too in the process. What it did tell us is that we do have significant flash flooding in Lara. We do need the opportunity for the Bureau of Meteorology to actually participate in the process of identifying flash floods and not just saying flash floods in Lara. The report has actually said that there should be the introduction of an online Lara flood report portal, and fortunately there is funding in this particular project to undertake that. What the report did tell us, which causes the most interest to the community, is that there is up to $10 million worth of mitigation work that's actually required in the Hovels Creek area. What the report tells us is that immediately Council should consider a special charge scheme for at least $2 million worth of work in the Kema Drive, Brownlow Court and Clover Street areas of Lara. And if the Lara community as a whole is actually experiencing annual damage cost of approximately $2.48 million, when you see it in that context, to actually have $10 million worth of mitigation works proposed over a number of years is certainly a small price to pay for the significant costs that the community is actually being burdened with every year in Lara. Sadly, what the report tells us, there is certainly some areas in urbanised Lara and outer-lying Lara that we will never be able to develop flood mitigation opportunities for, but at least the report now gives us a blueprint and also an outline of actions and recommendations that we should be undertaking as the Council in this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. I think you've covered the paper quite well, and I just wanted to say thank you to all of the members of the community that took the time to detail the past experiences of flooding, and there has been quite a few of them that have had really detailed documents, notes and photographs which really assisted this flood study. And I think what this shows is that the community, for those of us that have lived in that area for quite a few years, we know that Lara is prone to flooding, and hopefully some of these works can get underway to make it so that it is not a regular occurrence into the people's houses. Any other councillors to make comment on that item? Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. I fully endorse what you and Councillor Aitken has said, and I do emphasise that this is an important, and especially important, disaster risk reduction planning exercise, especially in the light of climate change and the likelihood of higher intensity rainfall, even though we are expecting lower annual rainfalls. And so, as Councillor Aitken said, the area is affected by both riverine and stormwater flooding. And so in disaster risk reduction, we must mitigate hazards and threats while concurrently increasing community resilience by improving awareness, preparedness and response capacity. And I'd like to note in this light that early warning systems are recommended to be installed. I also note that I'd like to alert the community that there's a special fact sheet available now called Managing Flood Risks in Lara.
Councillor, any other councillors to make comment? Councillor Aiken to close.
Nothing further to add, Acting Mayor.
Thank you, and I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Item number 2, which is the Rippleside Inclusive Play Space Update. Moved Councillor Aiken and seconded Councillor Contell. Councillor Aiken. Oh, sorry, let's ask Councillor Nelson to leave quickly. Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. Look, it's my pleasure as Chair of the Access and Inclusion Committee of the City of Greater Geelong to move this recommendation tonight. What we're attempting to do here is build Geelong's best playground at one of Geelong's most prominent and accessible locations at Rippleside Park, and we are attempting to build our most inclusive playground that exists in Geelong. This project was originally started with discussions from Mayor Harwood and members of the community that wanted to actually develop an inclusive play space in Geelong. And to the officer's credit, they identified that the Geelong Community Venture Playground that currently exists at Rippleside Park, which was built in 2000, was at end of life. And this was a perfect opportunity to take that initial interest from the community and renew an asset, and not only renew an asset, but actually build an asset of significant regional and state significance for the City of Greater Geelong. This project, in terms of cost, has a total cost of about $2.5 million. The purpose of the site location is that this is a unique place where people of all ages and abilities will be able to play alongside each other, creating a community hub. The design aims to be safe, foster social interaction, provide amenity for all users, and appeal to both internal and external senses that someone may have. There's some really unique design features that are being proposed for this all-inclusive playground. An iconic treetop walk with views of the trees across the play space is actually being proposed. And that structure will actually have multiple entries for people of all abilities, and importantly, includes wheelchair access for up to 2.5 metres high in the design. It also resolves complex site levels to ensure there can be wheelchair accessibility across the whole of the play space. For those that know, the Rippleside area actually slants quite significantly. It will also include a surrounding fence so that we can address the issue associated with autism and those young people on the spectrum that love to play but also love to run just as much. This play space that we're looking at and adopting tonight in terms of a design principle includes some really unique play aspects. We're looking at rocking, spinning and jumping equipment. We're looking at toddler play areas. We're looking at sand play areas. We're looking at the treetop walk that I've already mentioned. We're looking at swings that are inclusive. We're looking at a nature play area. We're looking at gathering and picnic areas within the playground area. We're looking at agility and fitness in terms of the components of design as well too. We're looking at water play in a significant part of this, and importantly we're also looking at sensory experiences and artistic elements that actually address the capacity to be an all-inclusive icon for the Geelong community. I'm really proud of this project. All the members on the Access and Inclusion Committee, which have the responsibility to actually ensure that the City of Greater Geelong has facilities, buildings and environments and experiences that are accessible and provided more accessible public urban spaces in Geelong, are tremendously excited about this project. This is an icon project for them and is an opportunity to show the broader Geelong community that we can actually build places and spaces that are accessible to all within the Geelong community. I'm also very pleased that this project actually has a total budget of $2.5 million. Council last year committed $400,000 in its budget towards this project, and this financial year, a week ago, we contributed a further $1.1 million. So already the project has a total of $1.5 million assured with its $2.5 million. It's also my pleasure tonight to actually tell our fellow councillors the report talks about an application before the state government for funding support. I'm very pleased to announce that today Kylie and I both attended an official announcement from the state government where they have made a commitment of $800,000 towards this particular project. So after today's announcement by the state government, which we warmly welcome, we have $2.3 million associated with this project, and we only have $200,000 out there now for the community. The challenge is now up to the community to raise that $200,000, and I just point out two other aspects that the community needs to be challenged about. The $2.5 million does not include accessible toilets at Rippleside. And this facility will not gain its full potential unless it has accessible toilets. So the challenge that I put out to our community is to raise more than $200,000 and actually try and build and complete not just the play space, but also accessible toilets at Rippleside.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Acting Mayor. I'm really also honoured to be seconding this report tonight. It's an extremely uplifting initiative that we're looking to progress, being the Rippleside Inclusive Play Space. The Rippleside Park area and its surrounds have always been a beautiful place, and they still are. On the edge of St Helens, which is also having a lot of work done to it. It really is a beautiful part of Geelong, and you know, it's regularly had not only Geelong community people, but also visitors coming to the area to socialise, to spend time with family and friends. And there's no doubt that the current playground that's situated on site, which was built by the community for the community, has served the community well for several decades and has brought many children and people much joy. However, with this said, it also has left many wanting, and that's our precious people with disabilities and also aged. And so this is now a time to address this. So Geelong currently has limited play opportunities for people with disabilities, and the report will tell you that there's some 14,000 people with disabilities in the region and an ageing population increasingly involved in the everyday care of their grandchildren, and multicultural society and play spaces should provide an inclusive experience for all of these. The Memorandum of Understanding that we have with Variety and the Children's Charity is a great opportunity for us to be able to demonstrate a harmonious, cooperative approach to develop this play space in Rippleside, but also fully engage, like they did 2 decades ago, the entire community. So the next step in this is extremely important, and that is the next round of community engagement and consultation, because this will be the first opportunity that the community has really had to see and provide feedback on the concept plans. And what I'm really hoping is that we receive really great feedback from a wide variety of groups and people, but also that we receive feedback and input regarding security and maybe even CCTV, because once this beautiful and unique play space is built, we need to make sure that we do all that we can to secure it from the ignorant, selfish and scum of society who take great pleasure from others' misfortune. And that is the thieves and the vandals and the gutless of this world who love to prey on the vulnerable and ruin and steal beautiful assets that are in the community, that are paid for by the hard-working community. And we often see playgrounds and play spaces and facilities that are put in by government and councils only for them to be graffitied, for them to be damaged, and for swings and play equipment to be stolen from those that most need it. So with that, I hope that all councillors here and us as an organisation do all we can to let people know that this is out there so that they contribute their contribution to the feedback. Thanks, Madam Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Any other councillors? Councillor Harwood?
Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, this conversation started in early 2018 with a fellow Shane Quinn, who's well known to those in Geelong. And he came with an idea that we discussed over a period of time. His motivation was he has a relative who has a disability, and he saw an opportunity, and we discussed the idea of Rippleside Park and others around the region, but we thought that Rippleside Park presented the best opportunity. Spoke with I think the Director of Community Life at the time, might have been Robin Stevens or similar.
Linda Quinn?
Or Linda Quinn, maybe. But in a nutshell, it was fortuitous insofar as realising that the life of the current Rippleside Park playground was coming to an end. It had been well worn and well used, so the timing was starting to come together. And then we started a process about, well, how might this work, and what funds are going to be required, and how big will this be, and what will it actually do. So cutting to the chase, we fortunately over a period of time landed with Variety. They have experience in building these types of all-ability playgrounds. I've been fortunate enough to look at a couple, Ballarat and Canberra, and I know there's one in Taree and Bankstown, I think, as well, that Variety have been involved in. In a nutshell, they are a park that is designed to look like an ordinary playground. They're not designed to look like an all-abilities playground or a playground specifically built for those with a disability. In actual fact, they're designed to look like a playground that you would see anywhere else around the countryside, which is one of the great engineering, secrets to it. It just looks like an ordinary playground, but has a whole lot of extra capabilities about it. And that is with smart engineering and understanding that the needs and capabilities of people with different disabilities, of which we know there are many and varied. I think it's also worth mentioning that there are already people in the community who are keen to help fundraise further and raise the profile further. And Andy Mathers at K-Rock and Todd Devine was it Optimum, I think it's at the Costa Asset Group or similar, and Anne Hume is the principal of Barwon Valley Special School, and some others. But they've already indicated their support and their willingness to getting involved, and their gratitude as well. I mean, in particular, because they can see what this would mean to their community and to their children, to have a playground like no other, so that their children will be treated just the same as everybody else. There's no difference, just that the park offers a whole range of different engineering capabilities for kids with disabilities. So really exciting. Great to hear the state government announcement of the funding contribution. That's fantastic. We're nearly there, but the toilet facility is an issue. But I'm sure now, with the huge impetus that we have, that we can get the targeted amount required and build a park that the whole Geelong region will be absolutely proud of, and will be a a real shining light in this particular space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. This park is well loved by our family, and I know many other families around. As has been said, it's been well used by many over the years, but like a lot of social infrastructure, that was built previously, it was built in a way that excludes many people from using it, and in a sense, the way we design things can actually be disabling, and by removing barriers to access, it means that all people are enabled to participate. So I'm really excited about the new playground that's going to be developed here. I have had feedback from the community over the years about the broader accessibility of that area, and I'm hoping that with this new playground we'll be able to address some of those concerns just around footpaths and some of the risks associated with trying to get into that park from the car park and crossing the roads around there. So hopefully we'll be able to address all of those issues, as well as the accessibility issues around toilets. And as Councillor Contell has said, that it's not just the children who are using the playground that this will benefit, but all those who come along with the children, all their families and carers and other people who, for all sorts of different reasons, might have mobility aids or other reasons why the existing playground infrastructure excludes them. So I'm really excited about this. I can't wait to see it unfold. I'd really encourage the community, all the users of that space and all those who would love to use that space but can't, to provide us with some feedback during this community consultation period, and we'll continue to work in partnership with the community and all the other participating organisations and levels of government to deliver what should be a real asset for our for the City of Greater Geelong.
Mansfield. Any other councillors want to speak on this item? No. Back to Councillor Aiken to close.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. Look, thank you to all the councillors' support and endorsement on this. Thank you to the state government's significant contribution announcement today of $800,000. It certainly ensures that this project actually will now go ahead as soon as we've finished public consultation about the designs and the impact that the playground is proposed to make in the Rippleside precinct area. Many councillors have mentioned that the existing playground is well loved. This new playground will be even better loved, I think, because of the inclusive aspects on it. That we shouldn't think that this is the only inclusive playground that we should be building in Geelong. In fact, we've got a policy that actually says now that all our playgrounds that we actually build from now on in Geelong should have inclusive elements on it. We have limited opportunities now for people with disabilities to actually participate in playgrounds. This is certainly going to be an icon and a showcase statement for Geelong about inclusive playgrounds, but we certainly have to do something more in other areas of Geelong as well too, to make sure that there is as much opportunity for inclusiveness in our infrastructure and social infrastructure that we provide in Geelong. We've got 14,000 people that daily live with disabilities in Geelong. The majority of those are younger people. So we do have a responsibility to be able to enable them to participate in what we call normal activities, and being able to go to the playground with your carer, with your family and by yourself is something important, and this playground is certainly going to give the capacity to be able to do that in Geelong.
Councillor Aiken, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Councillor Nelson, can we get Councillor Nelson back in, please? Thank you. Moving to item 3, which is the Affordable Social Housing Advisory Committee Terms of Reference. Moved Councillor Mansfield, second Councillor Manane. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mayor. The social housing strategy that plan that we endorsed earlier this year is, as I've said at the time, one of the most significant pieces of work that this council will potentially undertake over the next couple of decades. And I'm really proud to be part of a council that has looked at how we can contribute to improving the availability of affordable and social housing in our community. We know that there are many thousands of people who live currently in housing stress or are homeless as a result of the lack of affordable housing and the lack of social housing. And there is a huge deficit in the availability of housing stock. What this plan seeks to do is opportunities where the City of Greater Geelong can significantly add to that stock of affordable housing. In order to do that effectively, we need to get the best possible advice, and as part of our strategy, we're setting up an advisory committee. This motion is to endorse the terms of reference for that advisory committee, and I think they're very comprehensive terms of reference here that outline the role of this committee, which will really be to provide guidance, input, look at the latest research in this space, and provide advice to Council on how to further implement the social housing strategy. We're looking for a range of voices to participate in this process, and we'll be putting out expressions of interest in the near future once the terms of reference have been endorsed. But what we're looking for are people who are users of social and affordable housing already, people who live in public housing or have previously done so. We're looking for people who help to develop social housing and other stakeholders with an interest in this area. I've recently, and I know some other councillors, including Councillor Manane, have received really positive feedback from a whole range of stakeholders who are interested in social housing about our social housing strategy. There's, I think, people are very impressed in the community that we're taking this approach, and I really hope that a lot of those people who are interested in this area put their hand up to be part of this advisory committee, because I think having that broad range of voices and the experience of those people who have been around this space for a long time will be very valuable. I think I'll leave it at that and leave it for my fellow councillors to add their part.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Manane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Mansfield, for covering the paper very clearly and what we're looking for here. Food and shelter, absolute, not negotiable rights of every Geelong resident. And this paper, which is a very comprehensive paper, that report that we received recently, had some excellent recommendations in it. And this recommendation of creating an affordable social housing advisory committee was one of the recommendations in the report, as Councillor Mansfield has already said, which will help us kick off our social housing plan 2018 to 2041. Because yes, we do have a struggle here in the region at the moment with affordable and social housing. You might call it a crisis, but at the very least it's a struggle. We've got waiting lists of up to a year for people waiting for the allocation of a social housing residence. There are a substantial portion of the current stock, which is a bit over 4,000 houses, is old and in poor condition, and as a consequence, too high a percentage of the money that has been spent in this region associated with this industry is actually in property maintenance and the like, rather than rebuilding more stock to cater for the need. And the management's an issue. I mean, there are property vacancies in a substantial number, notwithstanding the waiting list. So That said, we need a different model. And with this report in our fingertips now, and with the advantage of an advisory committee, with the knowledge that we can get from our broader community, we have the opportunity to create that different model. The report calls for 12,000 additional housing stock, and the model that we can create could achieve that, I have no doubt. But it's not just about building the housing stock. It's even more important, it's about creating improvement in livability in this area and the social well-being of those Geelong residents that occupy. That is equally as important as the 12,000 houses. This is a $2 billion investment in our community over the next 20 years. And it would be a great tragedy if all we did was to build the houses and duplicate what we already have. A huge social investment opportunity is here, and we don't make sure that we don't lose it. The window of opportunity is opened. There is substantial interest from both the state and the federal government in this matter and support. And the cost of money is at the lowest level in nearly 100 years, so the opportunity is there. And the community is ready to partner with us, and we should do that. I'm nearly finished. Yes, local government should take up this challenge. However, we should be aware that when we do, we'll be subject to all the same economic pressures as the current custodians, and therefore we need to make sure we do it differently, we do it better, and we get a different result. We need to involve our broader community, just not on committees like the one we're talking about now, that's important, but to give them actually an interest and a stake in the game so that we can ensure their long-term commitment and long-term support of what is going to be a great opportunity for us to change one of the parts of our society that needs to be improved. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Mansfield and Councillor Manane. I fully endorse what you've just said, and just to amplify it a bit, in addition to us having the 12,000 stock, we need to increase the stock by 6,000 by 2030 and increase it by 10% by 2041. And this is really a grave responsibility, and we don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. We've just had the recent example in Melbourne of the tall towers. The modern idea is to have social housing spread in a diversity throughout the community, and it takes some wisdom to deliver this. And I think these terms of reference are well designed, they're really very good, and it will increase our capacity, really substantially increase our capacity to deliver. And we do have a very broad-based body of people, including consumers, community service agencies, community housing organisations, the development industry, state bodies, academics, construction, finance and philanthropy, all together on this committee. And I fully endorse the way we're going forward.
Councillor Mason, any other councillors to speak on this topic? I'll throw to Councillor Mansfield to close.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thank you to my fellow councillors for their valuable comments. Hopefully the rest of the councillors will support this motion tonight. I think this is really the next key step in getting our social housing strategy implemented, is establishing this advisory committee. Previously in my work as a GP, I worked at a service for people experiencing homelessness, and as Councillor Manane has said, having housing is such a fundamental aspect it's so fundamental to ensuring health and well-being. It's very difficult to start to address other issues that people might be experiencing in their lives until people have safe and secure housing. and, you know, I was reading this just today in our local paper that there's up to 80 women and children who are sleeping in their cars in a church car park nearby, in a nearby area, you know, due to their experiences of family violence and a lack of safe and secure housing for them to go to. So the problem is huge, and we have I think it's in some ways a really poor reflection on our society that we have such a huge need and a growing need, and with the impact of COVID, it's only going to get more significant, the need for affordable housing. But this is an opportunity for us as a council to make a difference in this space and try and turn around what has over time become a really significant problem throughout our community. So with that, I'd endorse this motion and really encourage, once again, anyone in the community who's interested in this topic to have a look at the terms of reference and put in an expression of interest if you meet the criteria.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Item number 4 is the tree management policy, and I've got Councillor Aiken to move and Councillor Mason to second. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Griesbeck. Look, this is tonight we're releasing a draft policy which is part of the significant work that our Parks, Gardens and City Services actually undertakes in the city of Greater Geelong. We've got 70,000 street trees and 40,000 park trees within the city of Greater Geelong. And we've got an annual strategic aim of planting about 1,850 trees per year. And I'm pleased in the financial year that's just passed, we planted a total of 3,255 trees. So we well exceeded our target, and it's pleasing that Council is attempting to do that. And hopefully we can do that on a regular basis. What this strategy do, it actually links to our urban forest strategy from 2015, and it also links once again to our sustainability framework 2020 policy that was actually adopted. And what this is actually doing, it sets a policy framework for city services, how we actually plant, when we plant the trees, how we prune the trees, and how we remove a tree. And it actually gives some clarity to the organisation and its responsibilities that we have for our trees. And some of the important aspects of it have actually already been presented out in the community, but it is important we get some feedback from those people that have a significant interest about the urban forest that we're attempting to create in the city of Greater Geelong. I acknowledge that the document is very urban-centric and probably does need to have a capacity to be able to address the rural concerns, which are significantly different to the urban community in terms of trees. But some of the important things with this particular document, it sets in writing Council's policy that we will not prune a tree to facilitate views in an urban area. And that's a significant thing for this council to make a strategic decision on, because we get lots of requests from landowners, especially those that live around the waterfront areas in Ocean Grove and St Leonards and the city of Greater Geelong, that request trees to be cut because it impacts on their views. And also people in Newtown that actually say they want trees cut because it impacts on their views of the areas such as the Finesford Common and other aspects that they believe they have a right to a view. So this document actually gives a clear policy position for the council to not actually undertake that. It actually talks about that trees should be pruned for safety reasons, but not for personal aesthetic reasons for someone to have a view. It also talks about that the council should plant trees whenever there is a request from the community in their precinct that they live, with the at least simple standard that if you don't have a tree and you request a tree, council will now, under this policy, attempt to actually plant a tree during the next planting cycle. If you do have a tree already in your nature strip or in your property holdings that you do have at the front of your urbanised area, the council will then leave it to discretion whether they would actually plant another tree, and in most cases they wouldn't if your existing tree does have a mature aspect. So this document is actually quite significant in terms of what City Services is doing in terms of our responsibilities about our tree. Our sustainability framework talked about the importance of coverage and reducing the heat maps throughout the Geelong region associated with climate change. And the sustainability framework then said we should be looking at ways to try and address that heat map that's we have recognised, and trees is one of those opportunities to be able to do that. And that's why we're actually saying we're not going to indiscriminately just plant trees anywhere. We're not going to prune trees just at the request of somebody. We have got a whole basis strategically why we are actually having a tree management policy and understanding the importance of trees in our sustainability and the significance that climate change is making in the Geelong region. So this is a good document. There are opportunities to be able to improve it, I think. I hope we do get community feedback from it. We don't address the issue that trees are also a significant source of food, in that we talk about, our policy talks about we will plant trees based on our Indigenous plant regimes, but we're actually now finding that some community members do want to take advantage of the flora aspect and the food sustainability that can be addressed through trees in our urban areas in particular. But this is going out to public consultation now. I do hope those people that have an interest in this issue do actually read it and provide some feedback and assistance to council if this document does need to be improved.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Aitken. I fully endorse everything that has been said, and this really is a very significant document, and it does cover a complex and wide range of issues. And they've already been mentioned, and they range from planning and planting to managing what we actually have. And managing what we have is really also quite a complex thing. And the policy does apply to all trees within the City of Greater Geelong and located on council-owned and managed land or subject to protection by the City of Greater Geelong planning scheme. And it applies to all council departments, government entities, utility companies, landowners, developers and community members. So that does emphasise how it is complex. And as Councillor Aitken did mention, it does include the rural and coastal areas. And it is very important that we get clear feedback from all stakeholders, and certainly it's very important that we have great certainty. It's also important to have a tree management policy where there are no inconsistencies in management and community understanding, and therefore reduces any risk of conflict. This draft policy has many strengths. It considers First Nation culture and heritage. It considers the city biodiversity strategy, the city Indigenous environment and climate change policies. And it's especially relevant to our stated aim of planting 1 million trees to mitigate climate change. And I'd just like to make special mention also of, other than the very complex issues in regards management, one thing is tree root interactions, and there's really a lot of things associated there where we need great certainty. But this policy also refers to native vegetation and biodiversity, and our obligations under the national and state biodiversity legislation, where native vegetation frameworks must be considered, including increasing the national extent and connectivity of native vegetation. And so I could read out quite a lot of acts and legislation, such as the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999, the National Strategy for Conservation of Australia's Biological Diversity, etc. This is quite fitting. It's really a very good document. I'm sure there'll be some community input from this where it'll only be strengthened, and I thank colleagues for the inputs and the officers who've designed this so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other councillors? Councillor Contell?
Thanks. Acting Madam Mayor, I've no doubt the document's comprehensive, and I also, like my two other colleagues that have spoken before me, encourage the community to really read this and put their thoughts forward, because I've been a councillor now since 2010, and I must admit one of the most difficult and challenging issues that one has to deal with as a councillor is tree issues. And we've got many a tree throughout our suburbs that are just absolutely inappropriate for the area. They damage infrastructure, they damage footpaths, they damage residents' fences, they block gutters, they're planted in the wrong place, they're planted under telegraph lines, they've got gum trees under telegraph lines, and to try and get something done about that is near on impossible because you can't cut a branch. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And whilst I don't necessarily disagree with Councillor Aitken, we have views in this city that are magnificent, absolutely magnificent vistas, but to just outplant them with trees and then not allow those views to be seen by the public that's driving along the road or have come to a specific place. St Helens Point in case, we've been dealing with an issue now for over a month where we were about to plant an urban forest that you would not be able to see the water from the street. These are decisions that affect the community for decades, because once the tree's planted, you can't have it removed. Now we've got trees that are absolutely inappropriate for their place in the suburbs, and we can't touch them. And you've got residents that are absolutely going bonkers because their fence is being damaged, or their gutters are being blocked, or their infrastructure, their roof and their gutters are being damaged, and you've got to go and lobby and bat for them to try and get them some help. And it is extremely frustrating for the punter out there. So I'm all for the report going out, and I really do hope that we do get some good feedback, and I hope we listen to that feedback so that we do learn from the mistakes of the past, and that we, with this 1 million trees that we plant, that they are appropriate for where we put them, and that they are appropriate height and serve the community well into the future, but that we get the balance right. So I think the report is important, but it really needs to be considered with all that we've done in the past that has been wrong, and take on board the community's feedback.
Councillor Contell. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Acting Madam Mayor. I share Councillor Contell's, frustration and some of the views he's expressed, but I also fully understand where the tree management policy is designed to go. And as I also have had many experience where residents are frustrated with some of the issues that trees have caused. They don't want the trees to be cut down and removed and not replaced, but they need the trees to be either removed because of various reasons, as Councillor Contell has alluded to, but they also would welcome trees being planted elsewhere within their nature strips or within their property boundaries. And one of the issues we have is some trees have been planted by well-meaning people out in the community on nature strips, going back some time, and those trees have now become quite problematic. They're an inappropriate tree in an inappropriate place, and they are causing not just damage to council infrastructure of curb and channel and footpaths, but they're actually creating a danger to the residents by virtue of falling branches and other debris from the trees as such. So it's a really complex scenario to get the balance right. And I'm going to use a term we haven't heard in this chamber for quite some time. There's a common sense approach to the issue. I think common sense went out with marbles and hula hoops. We haven't heard it for that long. But I think the point is nobody doesn't want to see a heavily treed, beautiful greened community. That's the easy bit. It's how we balance it out so we don't have trees in the wrong place or the wrong species or similar. We don't detract from some of our great environment that we love to look at. So I think the feedback from the community will be critical. It'll be really interesting to see what we get and what comments come. I'm sure there'll be comments about trees that are in the wrong spot and cause damage and are a problem. And I'm sure there'll be those who said, don't touch the trees, we love them. So it'll be finding the balance that meets the needs of all. And I just hope that we can get to a point where those who have genuine complaints about a tree that is clearly presenting a problem, that we can get a better solution than the current ones that we probably don't have, which is where we go to battle with some of the residents, and it's really confronting for some councillors, and I find it confronting. When you can see what the problem is, you're looking for a solution that it just doesn't exist, or doesn't exist in a manner that is conducive to a good common sense outcome, and that's tough. So we'd love to see that somehow reached, if possible. Thank you.
Councillor Harwood. Any other councillors have comment? I might just make a quick comment before throwing back to the mover. We obviously have thousands and thousands of trees in Greater Geelong, and including sugar gums, Norfolk pines, and Myrna trees. I've got to get that pronunciation right. I think there is a fine balance between making sure that we are encouraging tree growth and continuing to revegetate, but where they are dangerous to people and to children. We have some real issues out where I am in Lara with sugar gum trees. Now, they seem to fall pretty indiscriminately. It's not when it's a high wind, it's not when there's a storm, it actually is just random. And they've been copiced, I think that's what it's called, and then they are to grow again. We have a real mixture of views. Some people love them, some people want to get rid of them, some branches are falling on people's cars and there are kids walking past, etc. So a lot of people are really worried. It is a divisive issue in the community. I think there will be a way that we can get around this, and that is by having feedback from every section of our community. And I would encourage all people in Greater Geelong to give their feedback, because that will make sure that we have a robust policy by which we can stand by in the future. So on that note, I'm moving back to Councillor Aiken to close.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Gresbeck. Look, it's clear from the discussion that some of us love trees more than other councillors, and I'm happy, and I hope it is noted, that Councillor Contell and Councillor Aiken have got a difference of opinion on an issue, because I think that's encouraging to show it certainly won't affect our relationship, but it actually shows that we can reach a different conclusion with the same piece of information presented before us, and I think that's an important point to note. I also want to just point out to councillors that the tree policy actually does set out a maintenance regime for city services and how they maintain the trees, to try to address some of those concerns that have been raised about branches that become a safety issue, and and how they clean up trees as well too. The policy also has a tree removal component of it as well too, so it's not just talking about loving a tree forever until it actually falls over or dies. It actually does have a capacity in the policy about how city services can remove a tree. And importantly, another aspect that the policy has is that it actually talks about tree root interactions with public and private infrastructure. So there are a number of aspects in this policy that we haven't had before in the City of Greater Geelong, to try to find that balance that the councillors are actually wanting to try to find. And I hope, as all councillors have said, that those people that have a direct interest in it provide some feedback, and those people that have just a general interest also, if they wish to make some feedback on it before council makes a final decision about its policy.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. We're moving to item 5, which is the GME, which is the Geelong Major Events Committee Independent Member Appointments. I've got a mover, Councillor Murray, and seconded Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. So this is to announce the appointment of 3 community members as external representatives of the Geelong Major Events Committee for the period of August 2020 to 2024.
Sorry, Councillor Murray, are we moving just that slight amendment?
Just a correction. So 5.3, it's got 2016. It should be 2013. So,
Okay, so you'll move that with that amendment? Yep. Sorry to interrupt you. Yep.
No, good. So the Geelong Major Events consists of a maximum of 12 persons with external members filling 6 positions. They are for 4 years and must vacate the role at the end of each term but can reapply. The inclusion of external representatives on the GME supports the transparency of the committee and the recruitment process is open to anyone. The terms of committee members Dean Angland and Julie Maxwell will expire after next week's July meeting, and the 3rd position was vacant after the resignation of Mark Stone some time ago. So in response to public advertisements, 12 applications were received, interviews conducted, and as Chair of the GME I recommend that the reappointment of Julie Maxwell and welcome the 2 new members from 2020 to 2024 being Natalie Valentine and Brendan Caligari. Just a little bit about Julie Maxwell, her experience in the arts and communities sectors, has been a GME external member for 8 years and continues to make a significant contribution to the committee. Natalie Valentine. Natalie brings a wealth of major event procurement experience to the committee, in particular years of experience and valuable networks across the events, leisure and recreation and venues sectors. This would be Natalie's first term on the GME. Brendan Caligari brings diverse corporate sector experience and networks to the committee. His experience is also across the media and sports industries, including valuable board position experience. And this would be Brendan's first term on the GME. So I take this opportunity to thank all applicants for their interest in joining the Geelong Major Events Committee, and also formally thank Dean Angland for his significant contribution to the GME since his appointment in 2013. He's relocated to Melbourne with work, so we thank him and wish him all the best. Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. Councillor Murray has summed it up quite nicely. I also would like to thank all 12 applications that we received. Being involved in the last process for the external representatives, you get to see the quality of the applications we get, and it's not a matter of choosing who is a candidate that's better than the others, just who has the appropriate skill set to what we need on the committee at the time. Dean Angland was an absolute treasure for the committee, as shown by his skill set being snapped up by NBL1 up in Melbourne, so we'll certainly miss him. Julie Maxwell being re-signed is just proof of what she brings to the table. I do look forward to working with the 2 new members. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan. Any other councillors wish to make a comment? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. I certainly wish Dean all the best. He was one that always found any errors in any of the maths that was in there. Dean was certainly the person that could find errors in any of the plans and reports that were put forward. So Dean was always good in that respect, and certainly turned up to a lot of events, as does Julie. So I wish Dean well, and bring on the new blood, and hopefully they're half as good as Dean was. So bring it on. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any other councillors wish to make comment? Thank you. Councillor Murray, here to close.
Thank you. Look, I just want to speak a little bit at GME, just with the uncertainty that we're experiencing. It'll be perhaps some time before we see major events or large gatherings able to return to our city. And we as a city, via the Geelong Major Events Committee, are continuing to work closely with all event organisers to assist them through the myriad of changes and challenging decisions many events are having to make during this time. Certainly the landscape for major events is evolving on a daily basis, and as organisers and rights holders continue to innovate and transition to event models that may allow for the resumption of major events as restrictions are eased in the coming months. So we at the GME are certainly looking at any way we can bring them on, the major events, but of course we are restricted, so we keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. We're up to item number 6. Councillor Contel is leaving the room.
My assets with me just in case.
Contel is finding an early exit. Item number 6 is the tender T200036 Plant Hire Services. It is moved Councillor Aiken and seconded Councillor Nelson. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Griesbeck. Tonight, putting on my chair of the finance portfolio of the City of Greater Geelong, and this is a tender for the supply of plant hire used in civil construction and maintenance activities undertaken by the City of Greater Geelong. Interestingly, there was a total of 47 tenderers that actually applied for this particular tender. The tender has an annual budget of $3 million, so it's significant in terms of the expenditure that the City of Greater Geelong undertakes. The tender is also proposed to last for 5 years, so we're talking tonight with our decision that we have is actually a $15 million tender process that the Council is actually proposing. What the panel did identify out of the 47 applicants that put forward is that 32 of them actually did meet the criteria and the price points that Council was actually looking for this particular tender. And as a consequence, the City Services area and Finance have said that we should create a tender pool of 32 providers within the Geelong region. Now, you might say that that is excessive, but in fact, a number of them provide quite unique plant that is only available from that particular tenderer, and it reflects the diversity of work that the City of Greater Geelong does in civil construction and maintenance activities to make up that $3 million. So as a consequence, that's why we've actually got such a large tender pool. That's why we have such a diversity of different providers that are listed in that document, and I support the establishment of the tender pool for an initial term of 3 years and an opportunity for a further 12-month term, so it's a total of 7 years for this 5 years, sorry, for this particular tender document before us tonight.
Councillor Aiken. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't say too much more other than to say congratulations to the 32 tenderers that were successful. Quite a strong mix of local tenderers, which is good, and let's hope they fix our roads better than the Vic Roads contractors out at Dog Rocks, because that wasted millions of dollars. So good luck to the new tenderers.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any other councillor wish to speak on this item? No. Councillor Aitken to close.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Acting Mayor Griesbeck. So Council is about roads, rates and rubbish. Well, tonight this tender is actually about roads, streets and footpaths, and in fact now we've got this tender of 32 people. They can actually create new roads, footpaths and streets, and they can fix them associated now. And I encourage the City of Greater Geelong to have more than one grader so that the people in the northern suburbs don't have to fight to be able to get that grader. So hopefully from this tender there is someone there that actually has a grader so that we can try and improve the roads that actually exist in urban areas as well too.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. I declare the meeting closed at 8:09 p.m.